I never thought betrayal would come from the person I trusted most. Not after 30 years of marriage. Not after the nights I stayed up worrying. Not after the quiet sacrifices that stitched our lives together. It was a cold, rain-heavy night. The kind of rain that usually settles the mind. But that night it sounded like fingers drumming an accusation on the glass. I was in my study, the lamp low, a glass of old whiskey growing cold beside a stack of photographs. Wedding day, vacations, faces frozen in happier times. They stared back at me like evidence in a case I didn't want to open. Then my phone buzzed, an unknown number. A single line of text that seemed too small to change everything. You deserve to know what's been happening behind your back. Attached. A photo. Rachel, my Rachel, smiling across a table in a hotel restaurant. And opposite her, laughing as if they'd known each other forever, sat David, my business partner. The man I'd trusted with contracts, with signatures, with the future of everything I'd built. For a long time I just stared. I looked at the picture again and again as if repetition could wear away its truth. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of angles, a coincidence of light. But the way she leaned into him, the ease in her expression, those were things no photograph could fake. The whiskey didn't burn my throat that night. It burned something much deeper. A hollow opening up beneath my ribs where certainty used to live. What stung most wasn't the act itself. It was the banal cruelty of that smile, the same one that woke me every morning, the one I'd memorized over decades. She gave it to him with the same ease she'd always given me, and in that instant I understood. The life I'd protected, the life I thought secure, had been a fragile construction all along. I paced the study until the rain blurred into a steady hum. I read the message 100 times, and each time it rearranged the furniture of my mind. Names I trusted now sounded like accusations. Photos that comforted became evidence. That night the world I knew split on an invisible seam. Small things changed. The way I drank my coffee, the rooms that felt crowded, the way I realized the past can be edited by a single moment. But the biggest change was in me. When someone ruins your life, you discover a new skill you never wanted to learn. It creeps up slow, like a thought that hardens into resolve. Because once you see the person you love betray you with a smile, you learn how to return the favor. When I first met Rachel, she was everything I thought I'd ever wanted. Beautiful, graceful, effortlessly charming. She carried herself with a confidence that drew people in. And when she smiled, it felt like the whole world paused for a second. Back then, I thought I was lucky enough to be the reason behind that smile. We met 30 years ago at a charity gala I almost didn't attend. I was still finding my footing. A man with dreams far bigger than his means. She, on the other hand, seemed to belong to another world entirely. She was an interior designer for the wealthy, moving through rooms filled with elegance and laughter as if she was born to it. And yet, that night she noticed me. She said she admired my drive, my ambition. She said I was different, and I believed her, because back then I still believed love was simple, pure, unconditional, eternal. 2 years later, I married her. I promised her the world. And I meant it. I built everything I had with my own 2 hands. Long nights, endless meetings, sacrifices that no one saw. Every deal I made, every risk I took was for us. For her. And for a long time it felt like it paid off. We built a beautiful life, a warm home, 2 amazing kids, laughter over family dinners, summers by the coast. There were moments I'd look at her across the table and think, I did it. I kept my promise. But life has a cruel way of changing without warning. Slowly she started to drift away. Her words grew colder, her eyes more distant. She smiled less. And when she did, it felt practiced, like a performance she no longer wanted to give. I'd ask, is something wrong? And she'd always laugh softly and say, you're just overthinking. But love gives you a kind of sixth sense, and mine kept whispering that something was slipping through my fingers. Still, I held on, because that's what love does. It convinces you that trying harder will make things right, that maybe one more gesture, one more I love you will bring them back. But love doesn't fix betrayal. It only makes it hurt more when it finally arrives. It began with small things, the kind of details you try to ignore because admitting them would mean your world isn't as safe as you thought. Her phone, suddenly turned face down on the table, her business meetings that seemed to stretch later and later into the night, and that faint perfume. Not mine. Not hers, that lingered on her coat longer than any truth she was willing to tell. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. 30 years together, she wouldn't. She couldn't. But love, when it starts to rot, gives off a smell you can't quite describe. Something in the air that doesn't feel right anymore. Then came the night that confirmed everything. She came home late. Too late. I was sitting by the window, pretending to read a book I hadn't turned a page of in an hour. When she walked in, her eyes widened just a little, that half-second flicker of surprise that no amount of acting can hide. I smiled, trying to sound casual. Long day? She hesitated, just a beat, then said softly, traffic was terrible, but I already knew the truth. Earlier that day, I'd seen the message light up on her phone, a name I trusted more than anyone else. David. The message read, "Same time tonight?" David, my business partner of 10 years, the man I built everything with. We started from nothing, working out of a cramped office with broken blinds and a single fan that barely worked. We dreamed big, fought hard, and eventually built something real. I thought of him as my brother, my family, and now his name was the crack that split my life apart. That night, as Rachel went to shower, I stood there in silence. Something in me, something trembling and afraid, reached for her purse. Inside, tucked between her wallet and lipstick, was a small keycard, Grandline Hotel, room 812. My hands started shaking. I remember how cold the card felt, as if it had been waiting for me to find it, and in that moment, everything I'd been denying came crashing down. I didn't confront her, I didn't yell, I didn't ask why. Because sometimes, silence screams louder than any accusation, so I just sat there, watching her as she slept, her breathing calm, her face peaceful, as if the life we built together wasn't burning down around us. And I kept wondering, how long had she been lying beside me while dreaming of someone else? The next evening I followed her. I told her I had a client dinner, and she smiled, relieved. Maybe she thought I was too busy to notice, too blind to see what was right in front of me. Maybe she thought she was safe now. I waited outside the Grandline Hotel for almost an hour. The city lights flickered against the rain-soaked pavement, and the air smelled of wet concrete and cigarette smoke. Cars passed. People laughed. Life moved on, but mine had quietly stopped, and then she arrived. Rachel. Wearing that red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the one she said made her feel like a queen. I still remember the night she said it, twirling in front of the mirror, laughing, asking if I liked it, and I did. God, I did. But tonight that same dress felt like a cruel joke. I watched her walk through the glass doors of the hotel, calm, confident, her heels clicking against the marble floor like the beat of a countdown. 10 minutes later, David arrived, my partner, my friend, carrying the same briefcase we used to take to meetings together. He looked relaxed, like a man stepping into something familiar. That's when my heart stopped. You expect rage. You expect tears. But what comes first isn't loud. It's quiet. A silence so heavy it presses against your chest until you can't breathe. Because deep down, you already knew. And now, you've just seen it. I followed them inside. Every step felt like walking through fog. The elevator ride was endless, the numbers glowing one by one, each ding a nail in the coffin of the life I thought I had. Room 812, the door wasn't fully closed, just enough for me to see what I was never meant to. They were laughing, like two people without a single worry in the world, looked at him the way she used to look at me. Eyes soft, lips curved in that same familiar smile that once made every bad day feel worth it. And in that moment, something inside me didn't explode. It died, quietly, completely. No shouting, no scene, just the sound of my heartbeat slowing, until even that felt distant. I didn't stay long. I turned and walked away before they even noticed. Because I knew, in that moment my marriage was over, not with an argument, Not with a goodbye, but with silence and a closed door. But as I stepped out into the cold night air, I also knew something else. This wouldn't end here, not with me being the broken one. No, not this time. For weeks I said nothing. I perfected the look of a man who had no idea. The loyal husband, the quiet companion. The man who woke at dawn and kept the lights on. They needed me to be small, invisible, predictable, so I became that man. And all the while I was not breaking, I was building. They made a fatal mistake. They underestimated how much was quietly mine. Not just the house, the car, the company, but the habit of thinking 3 moves ahead, the muscle memory of negotiation, the long patience learned from decades of deals. They assumed sentiment had softened me. They were wrong. Every morning she smiled at me across the breakfast table. Every morning I smiled back. Those smiles were a currency I spent only to buy time. Behind them I moved pieces that couldn't be seen from a distance. I tightened the screws on things they thought were steady. I shifted responsibilities, rearranged authority, little bureaucratic adjustments that made an unsuspecting empire fragile in the hands of the unprepared.
Nothing illegal.
No dramatic hacks or midnight bank raids, just the slow art of making the structure depend where I wanted it to. I also prepared the ledger of truth. Not because I wanted to humiliate her for sport, but because lies must be named in daylight. I collected what the world would accept as proof. Messages that wouldn't be denied, photos that didn't lie, financial trails that traced intent. I did it with the cold logic of someone assembling a case he never thought he'd need. Each piece of evidence was a small blade, sharpened and set aside for the moment it mattered. The emotional calculus was harder. Our children were out of the country, their lives built on the stories we'd told them about family and fidelity. I refused to let them return to a ruined altar of accusations and spectacle. They deserved the truth, but I wanted them to see it in a way that made sense, that didn't reduce everything to shouting and broken plates. I wanted their mother's choices to be visible, undeniable, and finally accountable. So I waited for an occasion built for exposure, her birthday. It was the kind of day that gathers witnesses, friends who'd toasted us in better times, family who still believed in fairy tales, colleagues who smiled politely while watching alliances shift. He would be there. She would be surrounded. The lighting would be flattering. The speeches rehearsed. Perfect cover for the reveal. Revenge, I'd learned, isn't the same thing as fury. Fury is a flare. Bright, impulsive, often regretted. Revenge is choreography. It's removing chance from the equation and replacing it with certainty. It's the patient placement of evidence so that when the curtain lifts, what's left isn't just humiliation but clarity. It's ensuring that the world sees the choice, not just the consequence. In the weeks leading up to that day, I kept my face calm and my words kind. I made small, considerate gestures to keep suspicion low, a memory preserved to have greater weight later. I made sure our public life stayed immaculate while the private machinery of consequence clicked into place, and all the while a colder part of me practiced restraint. I imagined the moment, the room full of people, laughter hovering like a film over an unfolding scene until the film snapped. I imagined the silence that would follow when nobody could look away. I did not plan to ruin for the sake of ruin. I planned to reveal, to force truth into the light, to make sure that when everything fell apart, it did so on terms I chose. Because there is a final cruelty in letting someone think they've already won. My plan was simple in its cruelty, timing. The right day, the right witnesses, the right evidence. Not to destroy them with tricks, but to unmask the life they'd been living while they laughed in my face. When the birthday came, everyone would be watching, and I would be ready. Her birthday party was held at our house, the same house we built together brick by brick, memory by memory. It was beautiful that night. Warm lights draped across the garden, soft jazz playing in the background, guests dressed in their best. From the outside, it looked like a picture of happiness, the kind of night that makes people believe in love stories. Inside, I watched it all unfold like a play I already knew the ending to. Rachel moved through the crowd with practiced grace, the perfect hostess, the perfect wife. Her laughter floated across the room, light and melodic, but hollow to me now. She wore the diamond necklace I'd given her 2 anniversaries ago, the one she said made her feel cherished, the one I'd saved months to buy. She looked radiant, almost too radiant. But that's the thing about guilt. Sometimes it makes people shine brighter, hoping no one sees the cracks beneath. When she kissed me in front of everyone, her hand resting gently on my chest, I almost laughed. It wasn't anger that rose in me. It was amusement, because I knew every guest watching us smile, every toast they made, every compliment they whispered about our beautiful marriage, and it was all about to burn, and I was the one holding the match. For weeks, I had planned this moment. Every file, every image, every timestamp, all arranged perfectly. Revenge isn't a storm. It's precision. Patience turned into art. When the clock struck 9, I gently tapped my glass. The chatter faded, the music dimmed. Rachel turned toward me, her eyes gleaming with the kind of affection that made others envy us. I smiled. 30 years, I began softly, my voice calm, deliberate. 30 years of love, loyalty, and faith. Tonight, I want to celebrate that. Polite applause filled the room. Rachel smiled, her expression sweet and confident, completely unaware that the floor beneath her was about to give way. I turned toward the large TV behind me and connected my laptop. A soft chime. The screen flickered to life. Then, I pressed play. At first, just silence. Then gasps. The photos appeared one by one. Rachel and David. Dinners, hotels, messages that told their own story. Laughter frozen in still frames. Hotel receipts, transfers, proof carved into pixels. The room went dead quiet. David's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. He didn't move. His face drained of color. Rachel just stood there, unfrozen. Her lips parted, but no words came. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't need to. The truth spoke louder than rage ever could. After a long silence, I looked at her. My voice was calm, almost gentle. "Happy birthday, Rachel," I said. "I hope it was worth it." I left the glass in my hand untouched, walked past the stunned faces, the whispers, the silence that followed me like a shadow. And as I stepped out into the cool night air, I didn't look back, because everything I needed to destroy had already been left behind. All that remained was me and my dignity. In the days that followed, silence became my closest companion. Not the kind that comforts, but the kind that hums in the background, heavy, final, irreversible. Everything she had built on lies began to unravel piece by piece. It started with David. His wife filed for divorce within 48 hours of the party. The story spread like wildfire, through friends, colleagues, clients. The whispers that once filled boardrooms with respect now carried only pity and disgust. Contracts were canceled. Meetings dissolved. The empire he'd built beside me crumbled faster than he ever imagined possible. By the end of the month, David wasn't running a company anymore. He was fighting to keep his own name from drowning in lawsuits and debt. And Rachel, she tried to hold it together, but the truth doesn't negotiate. At first she called, once, twice, then dozens of times. Emails followed. Handwritten letters arrived, pages filled with regret and excuses dressed as apologies. She said it was a mistake, that she had been lost, that she still loved me, but betrayal isn't an accident of emotion. It isn't something that just happens. It's a decision, quiet, deliberate, and selfish, and she made hers. So I did the only thing left to do. I filed for divorce. Quietly. No spectacle. No drama. I didn't need to shout to make it real. The silence did the job for me, one by one. The things she took for granted began slipping away. The house she once decorated with pride, the bank account she thought we'd share forever. The life she'd built on the illusion of control, all of it, gone. The last time I saw her was in court. The woman sitting across from me barely resembled the one I once fell in love with. Her eyes were tired, her hands trembling as she signed the final papers. She looked smaller somehow, not in size, but in presence, as if the weight of her choices had finally caught up to her, crushing the arrogance that once kept her head high. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger, not pity, not triumph, just peace. Because in that moment I realized something simple yet profound. You don't always need to destroy someone to win. Sometimes, you just let the truth do what it always does. Strip away the lies until all that's left is the person they really are. and the woman who once towered over my heart was now just a stranger wearing the face of someone I used to love. It's been 2 years now, 2 years since I walked away from the ruins of the life I once called mine. 2 years since the night everything I believed in turned to dust, and I learned what it really means to start over. For a long time, I thought revenge would fix everything, that watching them lose what they stole from me would somehow rebuild what I'd lost. And in a strange way, it did. For a while. Revenge gave me something to hold on to when grief was too heavy. It gave me a sense of control in a world that had spun out of it, but healing, real healing, thus didn't come from revenge. It came quietly, in the small moments I used to ignore. I learned to be alone again, to wake up in a quiet house and not feel the ache of emptiness, to cook my own breakfast, to sit by the window with my coffee, to watch the sun rise without thinking about who wasn't there. It felt strange at first, like walking on unfamiliar ground. But slowly, I started to realize that solitude isn't the same as loneliness. Solitude is peace you earn after chaos has taken everything else. I started traveling again, not to escape, but to rediscover the sound of the ocean, the smell of rain, the laughter of strangers, and all the small, ordinary things I once overlooked when my life revolved around someone else. I found comfort in the simplicity of being present. I began to laugh again, not because someone told a joke, not because someone else made me feel loved, but because I learned to find joy in my own company. I stopped waiting for an apology that would never come, and instead forgave myself for trusting too much, for staying too long, for loving too deeply. They say time heals all wounds, but that's not true. Time doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't undo the scars. What time really does is teach you how to live with them, how to carry them without letting them define you, how to see them not as reminders of what was broken, but proof of what survived. And when I look in the mirror now, I don't see the man who was betrayed. I see the man who rebuilt himself from the wreckage, the man who finally found peace, and not in revenge, not in someone else's love, but in his own strength to begin again. If you've made it this far, remember this: betrayal doesn't destroy you, it reveals you. It shows you what's left when everything you trusted collapses. It forces you to meet the version of yourself that doesn't need anyone's approval, anyone's love, anyone's lies to stand tall. I could have let her break me. I could have let the anger drown me, night after night, glass after glass, until I became nothing but the echo of my pain. But I didn't. I stood back up, slower than I expected, but steadier than before. And every time I looked at the wreckage she left behind, I reminded myself she took my peace but not my purpose. Yes, I took my revenge but not out of hate. Hate would have kept me tied to her forever, chained to the very thing I was trying to escape. No, I did it to reclaim my power, to remind her, and myself, that I was not the fool she imagined, that I could lose everything, love, trust, security, and still rise from it all, unbroken. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's resurrection. It's looking the person who betrayed you in the eye, not with rage, but with calm, and letting them see that they no longer have the power to hurt you. That's the moment they realize they've lost for good. She ruined my life once, but in the end, I ruined her illusion of control, and that's a kind of justice no court, no apology, no revenge plan could ever give, because what I gained wasn't victory, it was clarity, freedom. This is my story, but maybe it's yours too. Maybe it's your reminder that no matter how deep the betrayal, no matter who turns their back on you, they don't get to write your final chapter. You do. So when life burns down everything you thought was permanent, don't stand there mourning the ashes. Pick up the pen and start again. Because your story, your real story, begins the moment you decide that no one else will ever decide it for you.